I do recommend that you tape down your sheet of paper onto your board. So you should have received a small sheet of paper. That's what you're going to be using. Otherwise, if you don't have it, wait to come and pick it up when you're in person. All right, so you're going to be drawing a line at the top. It's a horizontal line, and it's about a 1-inch width from the top of the paper there. And I just went ahead and I labeled these using my special label maker. You can just write it out by hand so you know what area is the dark area, where the mediums will go, where the midtones are going to occur, the light, and then the medium light. So I labeled this for you so you guys can keep track of them. What we're doing is we're doing a radial gradient. On a normal gradient, the line that I'm drawing would be a straight vertical line, but because this is radial, I'm going to try and suggest an idea of this object being round, like we're zooming in very close to a rounded object. So you're going to curve it like ripples on a stream. And this has to do with the light pattern. In the center, where it's the brightest, the lightest, it's going to be more of a circle. So you're actually going to change the direction of your curve to face the opposite direction. And I've made this actually a little bit darker. I changed the video and edited it so you could see that the lines there. I would prefer you to work lighter than how you see it in the video. So there are a few lines there. I just want to point out you're using just primary colors, so yellow, red, blue, and white. That's it. You don't have to use the same color palette that I'm using, but I am looking at a reference picture. So here's my reference that I'm looking at, and I'm looking at a real life object because I like real life things, but it also makes sense to look at something from the real world. So these are a couple of oranges, and I'm using that as my reference so I can see how the shadow shapes look and how the colors change as they move into the light. So we are going to be working this up in layers. So off camera, I mixed a color that would work for the shadow color. So my object is orange, so I was looking at a literal orange to figure out what color is the shadow shape. And to me, it's a combination of red, yellow, and blue together. I didn't add any white into the shadow shape. So that's what I'm working on. And this would be called the form shadow. Remember, the form shadow is the shadow that's actually on the object itself. So in this case, the orange. And I'm using short strokes. So it's more of like a dab stroke. I'll also use X's or I'll curve my stroke, but you really don't want to go longer than an inch on this one. And what you're going to work on, so that's my dark. I'm going to be moving into the medium dark next. And what you're going to be working on is that transition between the dark to the medium dark. It has to be a smooth transition. So I have a couple colors on my palette that I'm mixing at the same time. So I have the dark and I have the medium dark, and I'll actually take the two of them and mix a little pile of them together. So that way there's a nice transition between the two. So you kind of almost want to think of this as like a Van Gogh painting where you're looking at a sun in a sky. It's almost like a blood red sky, and then there's a sun in it. That's sort of how radial gradients work. Right now there's lines in between mine. So here's where I'm working on the midtone, but you can see kind of a line separating the midtone from the medium dark to the dark. And what my goal will be eventually is to get those lines to go away. I want it to be a smooth shift. I don't want to see those lines. And it's hard to do the first pass, the first go around. So just expect that you're going to be layering up. With paint, you have to be very patient with it. I don't know if you can see that, but I'm going in short strokes and I'm curving it around that central piece, that light side. So it can be a little bit tricky. It goes from the mid-tone to a little bit lighter to really bright in that center. It'll look like a circle. And then it goes back to being medium light. So I'm waiting to do the lights last. And that's how most painters work. They work from dark to light. By the way, I'm using, I think, 3 different brushes on this. So otherwise, you will have a dirty brush by the time you get to the mid-tones. So you're working on short brush strokes and curving that brush stroke around that oval shape, that funky oval shape. So I'm moving there to more of a yellow gold color. And again, make sure that you are alternating brushes, that you have a clean brush for the lights. You have a brush that's dedicated to the mediums, and you have a brush that's dedicated to the darks and the medium darks. And you want that to get progressively lighter as you go in. So I'm starting to add white. So I think that's the first time I've added white so far on this, is right here. And I want that light spot to sit like a pat of butter would on a pancake, where it's just kind of melting in and you can't quite tell where the edges of the butter are, or the light and the yellow spot in this case. So that's layer 1. All right, so now I'm working on layer 2. By this point, all your colors may have dried up. Mine did, and I had to mix them all over again. And we are going to be doing multiple layers, so expect about 4 layers on this assignment. And we're not going to get it all done in one go. We're going to get it halfway done, so we'll get at least 2 layers on today, and then the second half of the week we'll put on another 2 layers. Be careful though, you don't want to work on it while it's still wet. That's actually called tacky when it's still wet to the touch, or shiny in places when you look at it in the light. You want to make sure it's dried, so you want to just give it like 10 minutes in between your painting session. Usually the outside will have dried already because you are working incrementally on it. And your goal is to try and smooth that transition. Like right now, my transition from the dark to the medium dark is good, but the medium dark to the mid-tone needs work. It's too sharp. So this is how it looks after layer 2, but you can see I still have my work cut out. I'm just about to start on the 3rd layer, but I'm going to pause it here so you guys can work on just those 2 layers.